Welcome to the Soul Archaeology podcast, a space for connection, resonance, witnessing, and learning. Together we'll harvest medicine from the spiral of life, sharing conversations with other embodied humans who have navigated their own initiations and found alignment with their true soul essence. With weekly astrology, energy updates, embodied conversation, and channeled teachings, this is a space for you to land and find resonance with the spiral of your own soul. Hello, welcome back to Soul Archaeology. I can feel the energy building for this week already. How has eclipse season been feeling for you? It's been such a wild roller coaster. I mean, it's not just eclipse, the eclipse portal. We also have Venus retrograde in Aries, Mercury retrograde in Aries. So there's this need to initiate, to look at the energy that's building in our systems, restlessness, desire for change, desire for movement, for mobilization. And also still this pulling back into the old with the stellium in Pisces. And the sun finally moved into Aries on the spring equinox. I talked all about that last week in last week's episode. But there's still this heavy Piscean energy. We have the North Node, Neptune at the last degree, 29 degrees before it crosses on March 30th. And so we're in the past. Pisces moves and exists beyond space and time. And so it brings us to the point of merging the past and the future, the present all together. And it really reveals where we are operating from, where we are projecting from. And so often it's the past without us even knowing. So this is this time beyond time and space where we're able to access the old, to heal the past, to look back at where we're living in illusion, where we're living in a space that might feel really comfortable because it's familiar, where our subconscious has created conditions for us not to see the truth, simply because there's a fear of entering into the space of the unknown, the space that actually truly holds change and the transformation we're seeking. So I've been feeling and experiencing this push and pull, and I know a lot of you have as well, based upon your messaging, but this desire to move forward, to charge forward, to activate, initiate with the Aries energy. But also we're in retrograde energy, so we're going back into the past. We have Venus re-entering Pisces this week on March 27th. So we're in this push and pull, this in-between, this liminal space where we're going back into the past and harvesting medicine, information, insight, and getting that push and that desire to really leap into the future timeline. It can feel a little bit activating or triggering. It can feel like our shadow is coming up quite a bit. It's a deeply revealing time. We're in between eclipses. So if you did my eclipse portal workshop, you know what that means. And it's such an important portal. And so we're sandwiched between these two incredibly powerful eclipses. And in many ways, this solar eclipse that we have coming up is the release valve. So I'm really excited about this week. We will continue to feel the pressure build, especially as Neptune enters that last threshold point before it crosses into Aries on March 30th. And we're still integrating that lunar eclipse in Virgo. So there's a lot of psychic data and information that's up, that's available, that is surfaced for us to really understand and grasp the information that we need to move through and forward during this time. We had the Venus Cazimi on March 23rd. So you might have gotten some information, data, insights, realizations around your relationships. And it might not even be something to do with the other person. It might be all about your relationship to self. I know for me personally, I've been really doing a lot of deep work around my connection to self, my patterns of self-abandonment, my patterns of codependency, and how those can be so sneakily woven into my life. And I think that at this point, we're doing such deep, nuanced work that it really requires a lot of presence and a lot of understanding and awareness of self. So I've been very challenged over the last few weeks to look at where I still have those patterns present in my life and finding balance. And that's all about the South Node in Libra, is balancing our relationship to self and others. And I'll go more into that when we talk about the solar eclipse that's coming up on March 29th. It's definitely the star of this week. But we have to remember we still have Venus and Mercury retrograding through Aries. So they are bringing up old, unconscious material, old situations, past people, past relationships that might hold some information or data that we need, an insight or a realization, or just even a reflection or a memory that holds medicine for us. This is dealing with our relationship with will, with power, reactivity, how we respond to life, to others, to conflict. And as the sun meets with Venus on March 22nd, 23rd, then we move into a Mercury Cazimi on March 24th. And just a little refresher, a Cazimi occurs when the sun and another planet meet. So it's when another planet, in this case Mercury, passes through the heart of the sun. And this happens at 4 degrees of Aries. So as Mercury begins to move backwards, it's going to re-enter Pisces. But before it does, it's digging up any patterns, unhealthy or unhelpful, or even just neutral information that we need to see in relationship to how we communicate, where we respond from, if we're responding from our wounded self or the ego, or if we're responding from our higher self. It's boundary work. So I'll go more into that when I talk about Mercury Cazimi, but that on March 27th, we have Venus retrograding back into Pisces. And when she does, she will conjoin with or meet Neptune at that anaretic 29-degree point where Neptune's just been hanging out, doing its thing, getting ready to cross into Aries on March 30th. And then on March 29th, we have the partial solar eclipse new moon in Aries at 9 degrees. And that is significant because we're in a 9 year. I've talked about the nines quite a bit on this podcast. We've had new moons at 9 degrees since the new moon in Scorpio in November of 2024. This is the last new moon. It happens to be a solar eclipse in Aries. The last new moon in this line of new moons at 9 degrees. And the last solar eclipse in Aries until 2032. So this is once again this completion point where we're completing something and beginning something again. And this is so much of the theme of 2025. And a lot of what I've talked about on this podcast is this endings meeting beginnings. It's that threshold crossing, the threshold of Pisces and Aries, that fertile ground, the tomb and the womb. And then, of course, on March 30th, I've been talking about it for months, Neptune enters Aries, which is very significant. I'll talk more about that actually next week. But we are very much in this in-between space, in between eclipses. We're at the threshold of all this fresh life force, Aries, cardinal fire, as we still mix with the deep waters of Pisces, endings, death, loss and release, the unseen and then the unknown, which can oftentimes feel so activating. Over the last few months, it might have been hard to see and feel boundaries and limits. The veil has been so thin, but as we moved through and continue to move through this energy, especially with these Cazimis, planets moving into Aries, the sun moving into Aries, and this solar eclipse in Aries, we are going to continue to see more tangible evidence. And so we're balancing this with the unseen and the unknown, the mysteries, what we might not have as far as evidence, what we might not get to prove within our lives, the leap of faith we need to take, with tactile evidence that we can utilize and work with in our daily lives to make the decisions we need to make the changes we need to make, to set up firmer boundaries, to act and initiate within our own lives. So we've been in this foggy middle space, really having to trust the float, to trust the current of life. And this year holds such significance with the Aries 0 point. Also into 2026, when we have the official meeting of Saturn and Neptune at 0 degrees of Aries. But the threshold between 29 degrees of Pisces, where Neptune is, where we have this Venus-Neptune conjunction this week, and the 0 point of Aries is the exact point of creation. It's new beginnings, initiation, movement, courage. We saw a lot of significance as the North Node in late 2024 and early 2025 moved over the 0 point before it crossed into Pisces on January 11th, 2025. We have both Venus and Mercury right now crossing over this point. We have a solar eclipse on March 29th close to this point. And we also have Saturn and Neptune crossing this point this year. So this 0 point of Aries is seeing a lot of action. It's the activation point, the birthing portal. It's where new life emerges, the spark of life, new beginnings, creation. In so many ways, it's what so many of us have been waiting for, moving through this dense energy of Capricorn, Scorpio, Pisces, sort of trudging along, having to feel the walls to get a sense of where you are, to orient within time and space, having to reach to what's familiar. And now we're deconditioning that and getting the push and the activating the free will and the life force we need to initiate this new chapter, whatever that is in your life, whatever it looks like, whatever area this activates within your life, whatever part of your chart Aries lands within. The threshold of Pisces and Aries is so significant right now. So I would encourage you to look at your own chart, to look at where you have Pisces and where you have Aries. And that exact threshold is where you will see the most transformation occur within your life this year. This is a year where we take the reins of our lives, where we decide to consciously choose our reality, where we realize the power of free will to shape and form our life. And in order to do this, we do have to dip back to reflect and look at what patterns have become normalized in our daily lives, what patterns have become default. Are they serving? They might have served at one point. Are they serving this new frequency, this new version of self you're birthing through this Aries 0 point birthing canal? And that is not the less evolved, immature, pushy energy of Aries. This is the mature, evolved, deeply emotionally intelligent, connective, collaborative energy of Aries. This is conscious leadership, conscious warrior energy. This is not adolescent masculine energy. This is pure and potent life force. And in order to activate this, we have to go back into this retrograde energy. We have to look at, where is our ego running the show? Where are we operating from wounding from the past? Where are we projecting that onto our current relationships and our current circumstances? Where are we falling into victim consciousness, which was one of the biggest things I'm seeing right now, is the subtle ways that we fall into victim consciousness. And this doesn't mean that you can't be a victim to something in your life. There are true victims. But victim consciousness is developed and perpetuated by finding something, some sort of comfort or familiarity or safety in the consciousness of victimhood. It allows us to hide from our power. It allows us to cripple and dissolve under pressure. It keeps us small and obedient. And it keeps us out of that scary unknown space. And so I want you to do an audit on your life this week. Where is this subtle victim consciousness, or maybe not even subtle, but more obvious victim consciousness playing out? This is really where our work lies, because in this new initiated Aries energy, we will not be able to hide. So right now, Mercury and Venus are retrograding through Aries, and they're showing us where we're sort of perpetuating that narrative of victim consciousness, where we are afraid to take the reins of our lives, where we are abandoning self because it's easier than attuning to self. On March 24th, we have a Mercury Cazimi. So Mercury passes through the heart of the sun. It's a point of full, pure illumination, mental clarity. It's like Mercury sitting on the throne of the sun. It'll bring powerful downloads, flashes of insight, revelations, specifically related to your relationship with self and others. This will prepare us for this solar eclipse in Aries at 9 degrees on March 29th. It could help us have courageous communication, the conversations that we've needed to have but might have been afraid to. Can provide mental clarity around what needs your attention. It's important to remember Mercury is in the underworld. So this Cazimi point is when it begins to emerge and make its ascent. So it's starting already to bring some insight and information. That point of Cazimi, that point where they meet, is where we begin to see it emerge with insights. So this point forward, we might start to get some clarity. Mercury retrograde ends on April 7th. We'll still be in the shadow, but really all through April, we're in this shadow phase, but we're going to start to see more clarity and insight emerge. And then on March 27th, Venus re-enters Pisces and meets immediately with Neptune at 29 degrees of Pisces. And Venus is exalted in Pisces. She entered the underworld phase of Aries on March 1st and has journeyed through her Cazimi last week. And now as she begins to move through her ascent, she's going to re-enter Pisces. She feels comfortable here. It's where she can be romantic and expanded and free to love in the ways that she wants to. However, she can also be overly romantic. She can have rose-colored glasses. She can live in illusion. So this point where Neptune and Venus meet at 29 degrees will begin to reveal where you are holding illusions in your relationships, your relationship with others, your relationship with money, your relationship with your values. This is deeply powerful and incredibly helpful for us to see where we are afraid to look at the truth. Like I said, where we're playing into victim consciousness or victim dynamics where you feel disempowered, or where you might be waiting to be saved or looking for an easy way out, where you give away your power or you prefer to escape reality, which is a shadow of Pisces, and live in the illusion of love. This is a time to set firm boundaries, to get super crystal clear on where you end and another begins. Energetic and relational boundaries, healthy money habits, moving from delusion to truth. You might see old illusions come to the surface, especially since 2011 when Neptune entered Pisces. This is going to be old content and material that comes up as Neptune begins to dump all of its psychic data and information that it's carried through its journey through Pisces since 2011. And of course, it moves into Aries and then it retrogrades back into Pisces at the end of this year when it officially enters Aries next spring in March 2026. But this will really reveal where we're living from wounding in our relationships. This is really a time to reevaluate. Trust that Venus is bringing you on a journey, reviewing and looking at your relational and financial framework, relationship or money patterns that are really no longer supportive, things you need to leave behind so that you can fully and officially enter this next chapter. And it's important to remember we're still in this eclipse window, so you should expect the unexpected. This is a time to ride the waves and begin to make plans for how you're creating your new life, how you're co-creating it with the universe, where you're willing to take a leap of faith, to let go of something, letting go of what has been, to create space for what's to be. And this moves us straight into the solar eclipse in Aries at 9 degrees. And this happens at 3:57 a.m. Pacific on March 29th. This occurs during a new moon in Aries, the first new moon of this astrological year. But it's also the last solar eclipse of the eclipses that began in April of 2023. It's the last solar eclipse along the axis of Libra and Aries until 2032. So this is once again this tomb and womb, the end point and the beginning point where they meet, where they activate one another, where we need that fertile soil of what was to grow what's to be. And this actually completes the cycle, like I said, that began in April of 2023, and especially the full solar eclipse we had on April 8th of 2024. It also activates, and this is pretty wild when I was doing my research for this episode, it activates a solar eclipse we had on March 29th, 2006, that was also at 9 degrees Aries. So think back to that date. You might not remember that exact date, or maybe you do. Maybe you have journals going back to that time. There's something that you're completing. Life is a spiral. We revisit these spiralic pathways of the soul. What were you navigating during that time? A new moon or a solar eclipse in Aries is always deeply activating because it is that spark of new life. It's the first new moon of the astrological year. It's that new beginning. It's fresh life force, purity, innocence, truth, leadership, connection to self, courage, bravery. Aries is the sign of self. And this is closing one chapter of relational work that began in April of 2023 and opening space for a new beginning to emerge. So what have you been navigating relationally in relationship to self, your identity, your ego, your connection to your center point, and your connection to others, leaving behind codependent patterns of self-abandonment or hiding behind another, falling into illusions or victim consciousness. Like I said, this is also the last 9 degrees new moon we have in a string of new moons that began in November of 2024 with the new moon in Scorpio at 9 degrees. We're also in a 9 year, so this is significant. It's completions. 9 degrees is a completion degree. It marks both an ending and a radical initiation point. And Aries in its highest expression is a pioneer. It's an evolved leader. It's a conscious warrior. This will activate new beginnings, your personal power, the ability for a fresh identity to emerge. This can be the point where we truly liberate ourselves from patterns of self-abandonment, manipulation of self, reactivity, anything that keeps us in those old patterns of self-sabotage. This can activate our primal life force energy, the awakening of our authentic, true self. And solar eclipses occur when we have a new moon very close to the nodes, which are connected to karma and destiny. This is occurring in cardinal fire, so it's about powerful intentions, new, fresh energy, initiations. But like I said, this is an evolved version of it. We're not moving from the ego. We are moving from our higher evolved self. We've been along this spiral many times. How can you gather the wisdom you've learned over the last 2 years, and really since 2006, to create a new chapter and initiate this new beginning on stable, solid ground, a strong foundation of self. That's why this week is so activating, because we're building up to this completion point, this completion and new beginning point. This will be activating ancient dormant energy within our systems. We're finalizing one cycle and beginning another. Finally letting go of those relational patterns you might have been swirling within. We've been doing so much excavation of our past relational frameworks, auditing and looking at how we relate to self and others. What informs it? It's almost always informed by past relationships and experiences. How can we clear that psychic material and data out of our field so that we can operate from a new authentic place, a strong connection to self, which in turn births a beautiful connection to others and the world? Because our connection to self is what determines our relationships. We can't have healthy relationships if we don't have a healthy connection to self. And this is what this Libra Aries axis has been doing. It's been revealing the subtle, unsupportive relational patterns that we hold. With Chiron and Aries, it's been digging up our core wounding around free will, power, life force, identity. I really see this solar eclipse as a purification point, purifying our life force energy, that flame that ignites and guides us through life, but can so often be hijacked by our wounding and our conditioning. So it's important to allow yourself to simply move through this portal, this purification point, to observe what's coming to the surface. As we know, eclipse seasons are not good times to make big decisions, to make big financial decisions, relational decisions, but it is an important time to let go, to release your control, to notice where you're gripping, to soften, to create space for yourself, to simply process, to be with what's coming up, to allow old identities to transform without gripping to the past. When we surrender, that's when the quantum leaps can occur. This is a time of deep refinement. We've been through these portals of transformation so many different times. And this one's significant because it's allowing us to actually fully let go and move on from what we've been working through, to move on from the past, to actually fully and completely let it go. Think back to that March 29th, 2006 timeline. What similar patterns or programs have you been working through over the last 2 years? They might not look exactly the same, but I have a feeling they have a similar root. We are graduating from old versions of self through this portal of time. And Neptune, as it moves through that last 29-degree point of Pisces and into the 0 point of Aries on March 30th, is also asking for us to let go of illusions, to let go of escapism, where we fall out of reality. It's going to force us to initiate, to be fully and completely connected to our truth. And with this eclipse portal, it's planting seeds for energy that will unfold over the next 6 months. So these changes that are seeded will really continue to grow through this year. What initiates now? It might just be a realization or a moment of clarity that then activates this unfolding that occurs over the next 6 months. Trust in what's happening. Let go of your need to know or control. That's the South Node in Virgo. The more you release your grip, the more you soften and allow your body to open to the possibilities and potentials, the more that's available to land in your palms. When our palms are tight and gripping, they can't receive. So my invitation to you this week is, where can you let go a little more? Where can you trust a little deeper? Where can you soften? Where can you open your eyes to see what's occurring, what's revealing itself to you? And where can you be radically honest with yourself and how you are participating in what's unfolding within your life? Aries is direct. This time over the next few months is going to be incredibly direct, even ruthless at times. It might feel like you're being punished. I promise you are not. You're being prepared. You're being positioned for the next chapter to emerge. Do not allow the victim consciousness to pull you into a spiral. It keeps your field closed and contracted. It keeps you in this tight, bound state that doesn't allow you to receive what's truly meant for you. And this is a lot of the work that I do with my clients in my private one-on-one mentorship container, is learning how to retrain the body and the auric field to receive the possibilities and potentials that are meant for you. To expand, we begin first with grounding and resourcing. Then we move into rewiring, and then we move into expansion. So there's all these different phases that we move through, and it's all rooted in the integration of self. I have a few spaces open for this journey together, this 3-month journey. So if you're interested in that, you can book a clarity call. I'll have it linked in my show notes. This is such a powerful week. I can just feel the life force just pulsing through me. I don't have my oracle cards with me because I'm still in St. Louis for funeral services for my partner's mother who passed away on the lunar eclipse in Virgo. So we're here supporting his family, and I will be back in LA next week. So I'll have my oracle cards, I'll have my untamed elemental deck, but for now, just sit with the medicine of the life force flame. Where does it want to take you? What does it want to show you? Feel it pull all the way up through your spine, through your essential channel, expanding your awareness, expanding your auric field, letting it help you and assist you in pushing past those walls of comfort and familiarity. Thank you so, so much, as always, for being here, for rating, reviewing, sharing the podcast with your friends and family and on social media. It means the world. I always appreciate it so much. I also love hearing how these episodes land for you. So I'd love to hear if you have anything to share. And thank you, as always, for showing up every week. Happy solar eclipse in Aries. I hope you have a beautiful week.